As a reminder, please sign in to the agenda doc. Can somebody actually link the agenda doc here? My Outlook appears to be down somehow.
Yeah, I can grab it. How's the Outlook life, Stephen?
So great, so easy to do everything. I like it when I can't invite other people to meetings I create. That's just a great experience.
I think GitHub still uses Google Docs, even though they're employed by Microsoft.
Interesting.
Where does the time go?
Black hole.
I swear we had 15 minutes after that last call, and yet somehow we still managed to come to this one 5 minutes late.
Really what you're saying is we should end 20 minutes early?
So I can come 5 minutes late then, yeah, that'd be better. Okay, Stephen, you want to get started?
Yep, totally. I'll kick it off, I guess. Any new faces this week? Don't see anybody who hasn't been on the call before. So release planning updates. Release planning and updates. Any updates? Do we have Javier here? Yeah.
Yeah, I could speak to Pack, which released yesterday. Everything went well with the exception of, I think we discovered an issue on the Spring Boot side where they were relying on a deprecated symlink, which we removed. And I think the goal right now, or the strategy that we're going to go with, is to roll back the removal of that deprecation and kind of plan it out or phase it out for a later time. But yeah, so we should have a patch here for Pack most likely today.
Yeah, just a little bit more background on that, Stephen, since you missed it before. This stems from the fact that builders don't actually have a specification, and the boot integration was basically because they ported the Go implementation of Pack from a year ago or whatever it was, and Pack treated this as an internal change when it really probably needs to be considered an external change now. I assume KPack will have very similar problems with builders in the same way if they used pre-built builders.
KPack doesn't use pre-built builders anymore.
Yeah.
But does Spring Boot plan to stick to the pure Java implementation? I think it's good to have more platforms. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Any lifecycle updates?
We released the lifecycle 091 at the end of last week, patching a few bugs that were in 090, thanks to lots of help from people on this call.
Awesome. Next thing on the list is review outstanding RFCs. So give me 1 second to share my screen and we'll just run down the list as quickly as we can. Everybody see that? Cool. So first thing, relaxed mixing contract I put on the agenda for today. I want to just do a quick overview of after The label RFCs with spec is next. Forrest, open this. I don't see him here. Anybody have context?
It was a pretty short RFC, just about creating labels to help kind of focus and target the RFCs. Overall, I think it's a good idea. I think there's potentially a little more detail that needs fleshed out, but I'd like to see this go through.
Cool. So just keep discussion open, no change there, looks like. RFC authors create repo issues. This is about RFC authors creating
yeah, I'd like to talk to Daniel on this, or David. Yeah, sorry. I think I basically agree. I made a comment. I think Emily also had a similar or very similar kind of response back. So I'd like to see if he'd be willing to.
Yeah, I know he'll be out for this week and next, so we could follow up
Okay.
afterwards.
Cool.
I also have that concern, although I'm not trying to get out of creating issues for RFCs, but I also have concerns about what this means for people who aren't on the core team. So happy to chat about that. Next on the list is deprecate service bindings. This is an FCP. Anything just going to be closed, or?
Leave it closed today.
Yep, 19th. Today is the 19th, so that can go in. Do we need to create any issues for this one?
I will take care of doing that.
Cool. XID, shell-free profile D. This, I think, is when does FCP end? Today also. So I should open issues for this, I guess, before it gets merged in, and it stays in FCP. Is there a label we want to create for when it's been accepted and FCP is closed, but we're not going to merge it until we've created the...
Just leave it open. It'll force us to review it next week if you haven't yet done it. Haven't yet done the merge and the issues in the merge.
There was a question here about the ordering. Ben and I were chatting about, like, the way we defined which order they get added in, but I think that can go into the spec PR if there are any like kind of minor changes to what order we source versus execute XID scripts in. Then we can agree on it there. Next thing on the list, any stack build packs. This is approved FCP, and I don't think it needs any. No, we do need some. We need some changes so that we accept the.
Yeah, the asterisk basically.
Yeah. So same thing, right? Just stays in the state.
Yeah.
RFC for project descriptor flexibility.
I think there's. This is old. We talked about this last week. I think I got. I think we made some progress on some consensus, at least with the motivations and I guess only reserving certain table keys. But I think there's still some open discussions around the other kind of comment around the primary table. If I'm not mistaken, Ben.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I request review from the core team for this.
Yeah.
It's open and I don't see that on there. Cool. And layer origin metadata is a draft. Pack subcommands. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So hi, author of this non. I just popped in because I'd been here a few weeks ago and I was I think I mentioned then that I kind of didn't know. I felt I was kind of at the limit of my knowledge with what I could do for this RFC, and that and we were talking and saying that it might be good to have some of the like up and coming maintainers like help me along with this. So I just kind of wanted to come in and see where that might be at. If those people were on vacation at the time, so maybe seeing if they're around or if we can start organizing that. I don't know. Was that coherent? Sorry.
That made sense to me. I don't know. I don't remember the specific people we were talking about.
I think we mentioned voluntold in their absence that either Natalie or Jesse might be interested in this. Also, sorry, I've turned distractingly pink. I don't know how to undo it. So maybe we could sync up after this. I'm not sure. It seems like Natalie couldn't make this meeting today.
Natalie is once again on vacation, but it is just a one-day thing.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks for the context, Simon.
Jesse's also here, so
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to reread this to kind of reorient myself, but yeah, it'd be nice to kind of help you through that, maybe through the Slack or something like that. We can get a group chat going with Emily advising as well, probably, or someone from Lifecycle, just as a additional role. But I don't mind assisting here.
And this was based off of as well, I think at the time you were writing the original one, waiting for report TOML to come through, which has finalized, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Yep.
I'm going to note Natalie and Jesse to assist on this.
Sounds good.
Yeah, the implementation Slack channel might be a good place to have those conversations.
Sounds great. And then do you want me to update this from I skipped over it this time just because we said we skipped drafts during this. Do you want me to pull this out of draft, or is it still kind of early days, want to keep it in this, and you'll put it on the agenda if you want to talk about it?
I don't really know. I don't know what your processes are like for draft PRs or not. I was trying to just not be presumptuous and keep this out of the way. I don't know.
A draft is you don't want people to immediately review it for acceptance. It's still you're still working on things. You want to get it out there if people are interested, but kind of no pressure, and we skip them over unless you put it on the agenda.
Okay.
So maybe you keep it draft, but if you want to talk about it during the work group meeting, feel free to drop it on the agenda before any of the meetings.
Yeah, I understand now. That sounds good.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thanks.
No problem. Pack subcommands.
Sorry, I've been a little preoccupied. I haven't updated this, but I believe we're on track if I just update it.
Got it. Sounds good. Experimental features.
Yeah, I think I was saying I'm not really going to try and drive consensus on this. So if you care about it, vote on it. And if you don't, that's fine. We can close it too. That's what I mean by not driving consensus.
Cool. So is there any action needs to be taken?
Just vote, I guess.
Vote, yeah.
Got it. Application mix-ins. This is the maybe most a lot of activity in this this RFC right now. I think we're going to do a deep dive on this. It's on the agenda. Emily was suggesting that we do a deep dive on this on Thursday. Any short-term actions to take, Joe?
No.
Cool. And then the rest are all drafts.
Is Joe doing the deep dive? Are you volunteering him just now?
Yeah. Do it.
Sure. I wasn't volunteering him, but there are some very particular things we want to talk about. One of them is related to that I'm interested in. I opened 109 in order to unblock some aspects of that one, and I'll kind of talk about that today. But then there are some big questions about that we probably really want to talk about tomorrow. It might be better with a smaller group. All right.
I do have. So I made some changes to this offline build packages RFC. I can walk through them today. I added it to the agenda as well.
Cool. We'll talk about it in the agenda. Do you want to stay in draft, or
should I flip it back when I want people? Yeah, I'll flip it back.
Cool. Sounds good. On sharing, and next thing on the agenda is new implementation contributor.
I just wanted to, I'm here, sorry, my video's just turning off and turning pink and turning back on again. I wanted to officially congratulate Yael on becoming a contributor on the implementation subteam. She's done a lot of work on the lifecycle over the last couple of weeks, helping us get everything ready for the 090 release and adding acceptance tests and doing very thoughtful reviews of lifecycle features on both lifecycle and spec PRs. So congratulations, Yael, welcome.
Congratulations, well deserved.
Thank you.
Do we send emails for that, Joe?
Yes, I can and will.
Do you want me to give an extra ammo to that, or?
Yes, please.
Are you going to make Emily write copy?
I'd be happy
Maybe.
to.
I might even make you send an email. I don't know if that is like against your religion or anything, but
I've never done that before. You'll have to show me how.
Well, we gave up on email after they switched us to Outlook, right? So next on the list is how is KubeCon EU?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have stepped up to do booth, and then Ben and I did our talk as well. It's not quite done, but curious how kind of the other talks have been going and how attendance for those of you who have helped out with the booth, how that has been going.
So the booth didn't get a lot of traction or interaction, I should say. As far as visitors, I don't know that we have that visibility, but we have a couple of interactions, nothing too great. But then if we look at like other Slack channels and social media, there is a lot of really good stuff that's coming out in regards to Buildpacks. So at least there's that.
Would you mind linking some of the social media stuff in the doc?
Yeah, I'll do that. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I know we got some good questions out of our talk from Ben and my talk, and the organizers are going to, I guess the benefit of the virtual conferences, we were answering questions throughout the talk, but they're going to give us the list of those questions.
Yeah,
So,
and I would say a solid third, maybe 40% of them were, how does this compare to insert build system here? I have heard all the names of all of them now.
That makes sense.
I think to answer to that, we do have that feature page that I just created an issue for this morning where it'll add X, amount of other tools that other people might bring up in those conversations. So
Yeah.
hopefully that'll help answer that.
Yeah, we can fill that out as well if there are any that we were asked about that aren't on that list yet.
Yep.
Most of those tools just are other ways of building Docker files. So at least, we have a pretty simple answer.
Or Docker images.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, Conoco, Builda, all those things are basically tools that build Docker files or things that look exactly like Docker files. I don't think they're Jib and Co are still the only things I know that, look like us. Cool. Next thing on the list is Stackpack Deep Dive tomorrow. I think Emily put that on there.
That on here. We mentioned wanting to go into depth on the app mixins / Stackpacks RFC and also the Mixin Contract RFC, which sort of relate to each other in some ways. For tomorrow, I just wanted to announce that to everyone so that people come prepared to make sure they don't miss it if they are passionate about Stackpacks.
Oh, I thought Joe put that on here because he was volunteering, but I guess you're either volunteering
Joe, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see how this relationship is.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if you aren't super interested in spending a long time talking about mixins and Stackpacks, then tomorrow you can think about whether you would like to attend tomorrow. I think part of the reason we pushed it to the Thursday is so that people can self-select out if they don't want to wait there an hour for working group about it. And the next thing on the list is Mixin Contract. So this is I put this on there. I opened an RFC that last week that helps support that, and it's I think I'm going to try to just talk about it and not argue the merits of whether we should implement that, just so folks get an overview in this group. So I will share my screen really quickly. This is basically a change to how mixins work. Everybody see the, sorry, I lost the zoom. Everybody see that? Cool. And the idea is that right now we have, you know, basically for a given mixin, you can reference the mixin as, or, so right now, a mixin named my package, for instance, can kind of take three forms: prefixed with run : prefixed with build : or without a prefix. And the way the spec is defined right now, those are separate mixins. They don't necessarily have to imply the same change. They're not really related to each other. They just mean that the thing with a run in front of it, you know, it doesn't need to be on the build image for the stack images to validate with each other. This mixin, or say this RFC changes it so that those mixins are related to each other, in that, like, if a build pack requires my package and run my packages on the run image and build my packages on the build image, you know, that's all satisfied. It just means that the contract between the two stack images doesn't have to be so that, you know, they'd have like so that you could remove one stack image and, you know, not have the build : version of the mixin and everything would still work, for instance. You know, it kind of changes the power that the mixin interface gives you, because before you could say run : my package kind of implies a different set of changes from build : my package, and this kind of relaxes that restriction. So the Buildpacks can be satisfied by, you know, Buildpacks don't have to put run : or build : beforehand in order to, you know, select the one that the stack image has, and the stack image doesn't have to list both the build : and the run : versions of it, or both the build : and the not prefixed, or both the run : and the not prefixed version of it, in order to satisfy all ways that Buildpacks could request mixins. So it cleans up the contract a lot. This is important for application mixins because without it, there are situations where it's hard to, like, we couldn't validate that a Stackpack, or like if a build pack requires a prefixed mixin, a Stackpack couldn't necessarily satisfy that, or a Stackpack may try to reinstall that package if the non-prefixed version is already on the stack image. I think that's one of the edge cases. I did this last week and I'm forgetting all the details. So this just relaxes that contract so that Stackpacks can only, you know, like, I think the biggest benefit is Stackpacks will only run on the stack images that are missing the mixin entirely, by implying that, you know, these are really two halves of the total, you know, mixin name without the prefix on it. The more general thing here is that, like, mixins on the stack images, or mixins kind of imply two contracts. You know, if they don't have the prefix on the stack images, they imply a contract between the images, and they also imply a contract between the build pack and the stack. And mixing those contracts together, I think, is kind of confusing. And if we completely redid mixins, I think I'd make them objects and then let you specify when they have those requirements. But until we make a breaking change in this, the idea is just relax the restrictions so that we can, you know, build packs can satisfy stacks can satisfy, you know, or so that we can, yeah, so if a build pack requests something with or without the stage specifier, it's always satisfied by stack images that may or may not have it regardless of the prefix. I'm not explaining this very well, but does that kind of make sense? I'll
Does
let people
this
read it.
a quick question as it relates to, I believe, how mixins are presented when we do an inspect builder. If I'm understanding this correctly, with this enable where we could collapse a mixin that is in both build and run scopes to then just be listed only once?
Listed only once where?
In the list of mixins?
In the build pack when it's requiring it, or in the stack?
Just in the presentation of the available, well, actually, no, in the mixins themselves, right?
In the
Or
on the stack
for the,
image.
yeah, correct.
This would make it so that, this doesn't get rid of the stage specifiers in the mixins list in the stack image. They can still be used to imply a contract between the stack images. If we got rid of them there, there'd be no way to imply a contract between the stack images, or that you'd have to say that both run and build image have to be the same. So it doesn't get rid of the stage specifiers there, but it does get rid of the requirement that, for instance, you might list in the stack image build : my package and my package, so that something can require just the build time version, or can require the version that's on both stacks. Basically, all stacks right now have to list the same mixin twice in every stack image. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think I might have to look at more specific detailed examples.
It's like if a build pack needs image magic and it only needs it during build time, but image magic is on both the run and the build image. If the build pack requires build : image magic, right now that would fail if the stack images both have image magic on it, because neither the build image doesn't have build : image magic. And so all the stacks now have to have build : image magic and image magic. Does that sort of make sense?
Right, and going forward, it's implying that if you just had image magic, it would satisfy build : image magic on the build pack side. Right,
Exactly.
okay, cool.
That's,
Love it.
That's the only change there, really. This also implies, part of this that's controversial potentially, that I'm kind of willing to change, is that this still says that in the Stackpack case, when Stackpacks receive mixins, they receive them with the stage specifier, and we still kind of treat that stage specifier as representing half of the mixin or something like that. And I think I'm willing to just say nope, they just receive the package names. We just strongly imply that the stage specifier really just means this mixin is restricted to, it really just defines the contract between the stacks. It needs to be on the build image, or it doesn't need to be on the build image. And so there's a lot of comments here. I think I'm okay, making that change. But then there's maybe a bigger question about whether we should make larger changes to mixins that we can talk about tomorrow. But my goal here is just iterative change. It's not like replacing it with the next best thing. I just want to make sure we can unblock application mixins.
Is your plan to make a larger change eventually, or is that off the table for you?
Well, I think I would be okay with a larger change,
independent of this RFC.
I think the larger change would just be a UX change, though. Essentially, it would just be making the mixins objects, where instead of having a prefix before them to imply, yes, they're only on this, or yes, they're only on that, they're objects, and they more explicitly state where they are. And at that point, I'm not sure if it's worth a big breaking change. If we could do it, where we look at the mixins list and see if it's objects or not, and then if it is, accept the new format, then sure, that sounds great. If that's complicated, if people, I'm not sure how worth it that is, if that makes sense, but I wouldn't stand in the way of a larger change like that. I still think the underlying functionality of being able to imply a contract between images, so that you can't use a run image that doesn't have image magic with a build image that has image magic and all the dev headers for linking things against image magic, right? If you want to put that in your stack image so that you restrict users to what run image you can use with it, I still think that's a thing we should support. And so I wouldn't change the underlying model. I just change how it's specified so it's more clear in the definition. But I don't want that large UX change to block application mixins. And so just for now, I just want to get the underlying functional change into shape, and so that a package that has run before it just means the part of this Mixin that's on the run image, and when you require it that way, it doesn't matter how it's specified in the stack image. As long as that Mixin is present on the run image with some label, then it works, if that makes sense. Cool. Any questions?
So is this required to move the other RFC through?
I would
RFC?
I would block the other RFC on the underlying functional change in this, because otherwise there's some really not fun edge cases where your build pack requires a Mixin and it's either already there and the Stackpack runs every time over it, or you require a Mixin. And I think there's even a case where you don't end up installing the package. Strangely, it's like the way the assumptions that Stackpacks make about Mixins don't create a great interface for Buildpack authors who would require Mixins without making Mixins a little more like OS packages and then contracts about OS packages. Because OS packages are the only real use case we've seen, I think I started too generically with the Mixin interface. I'm happy to relax those restrictions and make the Mixin contract less powerful, because I don't think we need the power necessarily. Cool. Anything else? Next thing on the list is offline build packages. Dan?
All right. Okay, so this is yet another revision to offline build packages. And this kind of takes things in a slightly different direction. So previous RFCs around this were concerned with trying to fit dependencies into build packages and in this OCI format. This goes as far as just like pulling those dependencies all the way out into their own images that people can then use. They can combine them with builders, or someone can pack build and explicitly specify these asset images to use during a build. So walking through this, we have kind of the definition of what one of these asset images looks like. The layer format, some metadata, some rules about making it reproducible. You build it. It outlines a pack interface to kind of create one of these. And this will kind of propose some additive changes to the package toml file to figure out where these dependencies are. And finally outlines how you would specify this in both the pack build and create builder settings. As well as some like resolution cases we have to worry about in case there is conflicts. So, yeah.
So I did some comments on this 5 days ago, but I see that you've made some changes to it that I have not had a chance to look at. What was what's your final resolution of the idea around you originally had create asset would unarchive archives? Yep. Is that still in play?
So I think it's an optional setting now. So we have this like Boolean value. If you want to have a package that gets unzipped and all the raw files be splatted out, you should totally be able to do that. But yeah, you're totally right. We don't want to have to worry about doing this for every archive format.
Okay. Now, how would you calculate the SHA-256 of that new artifact? So I'm sort of thinking about this in the context of, let's just theorize that there could be another component inside of the build pack registry that's an asset registry, and two different build packs. One wants an unzipped JRE and one wants a zipped JRE, or tarred and untarred. Like, how do you resolve a conflict now of that SHA-256?
Yeah, yep. And so kind of the original way this is laid out is that this SHA-256 is just based exclusively on the original URI that you like pass in to create this asset package. So this is going to give you a path. That SHA-256 is just used to address whatever the bits are that you put there. So if you specify the same thing in two formats, that would be erroneous, right? As things stand right now.
But in and that's my concern is imagine a universal repository of this. It's not erroneous, right? Two different build packs may want the same dependency in two different forms. And that's my concern there.
I'm a little concerned about the underlying image you're creating. The layer is going to be a TGZ, and in the format in the example here, like where you wouldn't unzip the TGZ, you're going to end up with a TGZ inside of a TGZ stored in the registry, double compressed.
Yep.
I think that could make sense for like a jar that's in zip format. Yeah, you're going to apply double compression to it, but you want to see it on the other end. What's the use case for having, or like, is it, given that we're going to store it as a compressed file inside of a compressed file anyways, would you prefer not to have to double compress it initially? Like it seems like if the interface is you're consuming it from a URI and it's a TGZ and you want it to be a TGZ inside of the layer, then having you double compress it ahead of time, makes it obvious that the same thing is going to happen on the other end, right?
Sorry, but I don't think so. I don't think we can prescribe to universally to all build pack builders and all asset builders that for a given dependency, right, that is occupying a SHA, that you must use that thing either untarred or tarred, right? Like I totally take the argument that double tarring something is totally useless and probably is a negative, right? Totally get it. But I don't think we can tell every single build pack in the entire universe that wants to use a SHA, that wants to use a JRE, that they must use it untarred.
I'm just saying, can we make the requirement that if you want to use a tarred JRE, you do a TGZ of the tarred JRE, and then when you consume it, and that way we have a really consistent thing that we're taking a checksum of at the beginning. And also it makes, as a user, when you do that weird operation, it makes it clear to you that this is going to happen on the other end. Like I would feel weird TGZing a TGZ, right? Like making me do that, and the end result also being a TGZ, and a TGZ feels like it's not creating this interface where somebody might give a file to it, set a Boolean, and then not realize they're double compressing in the end, if that makes sense. They force the user to double compress, they understand that that's what they're going to get on the output also.
So you're effectively breaking a sort of chain of custody usability thing there, right? Like today, there is, when a JRE is published, a SHA-256 sits next to it. You can go to the website and figure out what that is. Today, we put it in our build pack TOML, so you can inspect it there. If we wanted to also put that in as the asset itself, like we can't retar it or double tar it explicitly, because now all of a sudden that asset appears to have a different SHA. And sure, you could go inside, but a lot of the places you most commonly look to try and verify that value are now wrong or not. Like you'd have to look inside of them somehow.
Got it. You want to reuse the checksum of the original artifact.
Yeah.
Use case.
Yeah, like there are a bunch of places in the Paketo build packs where if we cracked open a dependency and extracted out, the 3K worth of files and 100 meg dependency, like things would be better. But the attraction of always using the exact thing that was downloaded from the original vendor is very, very strong.
Even if, I'm not arguing it's not a problem that we need to solve, but even if the TGZ were a TGZ of a checksum plus the original artifact, and then you had a different checksum on the outside, you'd still want to use the original checksum just to do the file path lookup, right?
Like, no, like anything is possible here, right? Like we can add these kinds of indirections in all of the places you might look, but I've considered it to be a plus that someone can crack open buildpack.toml and verify a URL and a checksum, right? Like straight up, you can say, oh, this is exactly where I would have downloaded this from. This is exactly the SHA that I should be verifying that download with. And we can wrap those any way we want and put in enough metadata so that the build pack can do the verification it wants to do. But it's like, it's not great from a just inspection situation.
I wonder if we need two different paths, right? Or the same checksum. Could be in two different places, just exposed differently.
Right. So one of the things that, so a straw man proposal to something like this is that in the case of those, like, I don't even know how to sort of describe such a thing. It feels like such a weird special case. Like, we could digest the file system, right? Like when you explode the tar, it doesn't have to occupy the same SHA-256. We could use, you know, just like we do a layer digest or something for it and address it by its layer digest instead. But then, like, so you put in a little flag and we do the SHA calculation one way, but if you don't put in that flag, we do a SHA calculation another way. And like, it doesn't really hold up when you think about it.
Yeah, they're a bunch of weird cases there, I think.
Yeah.
Cross-platform support. It's like, I can think of a couple things. That's interesting. Something to think about.
Yeah. I think all the rest of this stuff, Dan, looked really good. But this was like the one thing that kind of stuck out to me is we certainly have a lot more focus internally at VMware about this sort of chain of custody and doing bill of materials and verifying checksums throughout an entire software delivery lifecycle. And it just happens to be front of mind to me at the moment that we have a discrepancy here.
Yeah. And so it's kind of something you're looking for, just a mapping between that we could make. Like, it seems like if I want to explicitly provide something in unzipped, like the unzipped format, that seems like an option I should be able to do. Like, it does make the delivery of this chain of custody a little bit more difficult, but like Buildpack authors should probably have the option to have this behavior if they really want it.
Agreed. Yeah. Like one possible thing might be that actually the untarring and unzipping is handled late. Might be an option. So as the life cycle builds these things or something. No, I guess you don't get to share the layers then. Yeah, that's a problem.
To me, it's weird that you'd have a single artifact inside of a directory, and then the checksum, the directory name is the checksum of the single artifact's contents, or like that interface, given that you could have other things in the directory too, and the file name doesn't matter. Could an interface be, if things are single artifacts, you get a checksum, and then, you know, as a file, checksum dot, you know, artifact extension. If things are TGZs that you want expanded, you get the checksum / at the end.
Well, the question is more of how exactly we'd go and do lookup. So when we had the big meeting a while back, we toyed around with the idea of, oh, you just generate a UUID, right? Like putting the SHA there had other problems. And I think actually the other problem has been solved by the additional paths configuration to guarantee that you can mount any one of these dependencies at more than just its sort of unique identifier location. So it may be sufficient to dump that SHA completely, right? Like, my big concern is there are logically two different artifacts or two different assets that might occupy the same SHA. But if a tarred JRE and an untarred JRE actually just occupy two different GUIDs, then that's fine, right? Like, that may be sufficient for us to do.
You had me all convinced that we should use SHAs for this.
Because
What if
we were
we
trying to
did-
solve that problem, right?
What if we did something where, okay, so we have, let's say we always explode it. So you double compress if you want a compressed artifact. And we use this SHA just to validate as we're creating the file. But then we have a different lookup where you can look up individual files by the SHA of the file rather than by the SHA of the download. So let's say someone else's TGZ didn't contain another TGZ, but it contained 3 files. You could somehow in this metadata format specify the names and the digest of each of those 3 files, and then we can make a different symlink lookup table that just maps digest of file to file. We don't even have to care about what the format of any of those files are.
What happens if you have the same file twice? Does it not matter because it doesn't matter?
If it's the exact same file with the exact same digest, we can just write a new symlink that points to one or the other. It doesn't matter. It's the same file.
Even though you can look up the path location and try to follow back from it, and maybe get to wrong things. I don't think that's a huge issue.
I mean, you have symlinks that have the name you want to access them with, right? And if they're pointing at something identical and they have the name you want, it doesn't matter which of the 2 identical things they point at.
What problem does that solve?
Everybody gets to look up the file they want to look up by the digest of that file, but you can still either explode or not explode when you're creating the layers.
When do you think that exploding would happen?
When you create the layer.
When who creates the layer?
So when we make an asset layer from a URL to a TGC, we always explode the TGC at that URL. That may in turn contain another TGC, but in our asset layer, we've written metadata that describes the digest of the particular file in that layer. So now we can create a different lookup table to read files out of layers by digest. For ours in this TGZ case, there's only gonna be one file and one digest. You're gonna look it up the way you want with the canonical like JRE digest. For someone else's asset layer, maybe there's multiple files and you have multiple lookup points.
Yeah, but like in the case of multiple files, doesn't that mean that like there's possibly thousands of files listed?
Possibly, but
and you gotta, like,
it's only going to create the symlinks for ones you tell it to create the symlinks for, right?
But that might be every single file in a JRE.
But we wouldn't actually want to be able to look up every file in JRE by its digest, right? So we wouldn't provide all the data to create those links.
Seems like you could end up needing a multi-level table and deal with the largeness of the directory of a.
It's a little crazy. I'm just trying to split the baby.
Yeah, and like that's why I want to advocate for like GUIDs. We discarded GUIDs because we didn't think we could go to like the Bitnami folks and say, every time you build a new version of Node, I need you to have it rooted in a different location, a different directory, right?
GUID's hard to deduplication though, because if 2 people generate the same asset from the same TGZ and it creates a different GUID for where that asset ends up in, then the layers don't have the same digest in the end.
Yeah.
And isn't that not solving the problem? The GUIDs aren't the SHA, the canonical SHA either, right? Is it just that the fact that it is a SHA makes it confusing, whereas if it wasn't a SHA, it's not confusing?
If you're willing to do a GUID, you might as well just use the SHA, and then you pretend that it's not a SHA, right? And then you do another lookup mechanism for the
well, SHAs aren't
SHA.
unique, right? Like in this particular example, the SHA wouldn't be unique, right? Like I am not a fan of Emily's suggestion yet. Anyway, she has a way of convincing me that trying to wrap that and have a level of indirection so that the original SHA can resolve to it is a good idea. Because like logically, we still come back to this idea that there are 2 artifacts, both of which occupy a SHA. Like I want to be able to say in my build pack, when you build a build package, I would also like you to include the asset for SHA-1, in my build package, right? Add the asset layers. What exactly does that mean, right? Does it mean go get me the one that's the doubly tarred version of the JRE, or does it mean go get me the one that's the expanded? And who's to say both of those possible choices exist at any given time? And that's where a GUID actually comes into play. The advantage of a GUID is we can assign a unique identifier, like ignoring for a moment the path problem. We can identify a unique identifier for every single artifact, right? We don't end up with the same hash representing both an exploded and non-exploded version of a given artifact.
If you had the flag mean wrap the individual artifact in a TGZ and then take the checksum of that, then you'd have unique art. So you could specify a single artifact, then you pass a flag with that saying, hey, it's single artifact mode, or vice versa. You pass a flag in the other case. It wraps it in the TGZ and then gives you the SHA. You have the same benefit exactly the same benefit as a GUID. It's still a random number. There's no overlap, and we get the deduplication. But it still uses two
Do you
shots.
get the deduplicate?
You do. You wouldn't get the deduplication if you. No, you would. Yeah, you'd always get the deduplication. Yeah.
Where would you you could? There is an edge case here, right, where you include both the expanded and unexpanded version, and the unexpanded version attempts to symlink onto a location that already exists, right?
Yeah. I mean, if they have the same additional paths, yeah.
Not even the additional paths, using Emily's thing where you sort of write this little side file that says, and I want you to represent this as this particular file from the inside of this other file. Like that means they end up sort of, the directory structures overlap with one another.
I didn't understand that part.
So Emily's talking like, if you tar the tarball, you have to have a little side file that says, okay, inside of the outer tarball, I want you to represent the interior of that as something else. Right, Emily?
Yes.
So this is
it's like a lookup table to things inside the outer tarball.
And then, so the place that would link to would have a conflicting hash with something that already existed.
So if you're going to do the GUID idea, right, and not use a lookup table, a separate lookup table, then you're already in a position where you can't look things up look up the file paths by the SHA, right? So like that idea aside, the GUID, using a GUID is exactly identical to using a SHA as long as you wrap the artifact in the final layer of TGZ. When you pass a flag, you get a unique SHA every time, you get perfect deduplication, you have a random number that's only the same if all the bits are exactly the same every time.
But it puts the onus on the build pack then of expanding that file so that you can get to the thing that's inside of it, so that you can then expand that thing.
Of expanding which file?
So
I think it always gets expanded. So it gets wrapped, shod, and then later expanded.
Right.
And stored under its wrapped SHA?
Yes, yeah. Exactly. If it's a single file, then you just do it all in memory. You just do the compression live, right? You put tar headers around it, and you TGZ it up, then you run it through SHA, just purely in memory, throwing away the bits completely, and that's the SHA you use in the end in the single file case.
It's weird because it's a SHA of something that doesn't get stored anywhere.
Yeah.
But it kind of works. It's a GUID. It's a GUID.
It's a GUID, right?
Yeah. And that fundamentally is my big complaint about using, even in this case where SHAs and GUIDs would be equivalent of one another, we are using SHAs to represent a thing that doesn't exist where those SHAs are written onto the file system.
You could write the SHA as a format that doesn't look like a SHA, and so people don't feel like it's the SHA of the artifact. We could put dashes every, 4 to 5. I'm just kidding. But, you get the idea. It's functionally equivalent to a GUID. It just looks like a SHA. And I think looking like a SHA bothers you, and that makes sense because you would think that would correspond to some artifact, but that would be that's the closest idea I have that meets the requirements, if that makes sense.
What's the advantage of it being a SHA over a GUID then?
Deduplication. If someone does the same operation with the same artifact later, they end up with the same layer, which is pretty nice.
You hope that the transient tar compression matches?
The tar compression, if you compressed your tar ball
ahead
of time,
ephemeral that you discard, that ephemeral one that you discard.
I mean, you wouldn't get to duplication if you tarred with like some weird old BSD tar and then create packages using the tar library inside of Go, and the headers are slightly different. Then you definitely wouldn't get to duplication in that case.
Yeah.
But there are ways we can control for that, right? If we wanted to.
Because we'd recommend you use something like pack create asset, which gives us some consistency the same way we do for build layers and stuff.
Exactly. And also how often is someone going to try to take the same art? Like if with the GUID, it's different every time. But in this case, it's only different in the case that someone references it once with their own compressed thing, and then someone later references it later with the expand mode on, right? So it's a pretty edge case where it doesn't get to duplication anyways. You really, really do get the duplication benefit in a lot more cases.
Well, no, like you're talking about creating one of these images, so you're going to need to set some. Oh, you're not even going to do G-zipping. That's why. Okay, that could work. Yeah.
Something to think about. I think we're at time. Dan, is that some good feedback for?
Yeah, it's something I can work with.
I'm curious what you thought that feedback was in the discussion. What your takeaway is.
Go rethink the usage of SHAs in this.
Or more likely, in the case where there are two logical versions of the same artifact, figure out how you can disambiguate between the two of them.
Yeah.
With some competing ideas for your consideration. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.